Hello, welcome to Chapter 6. I'm going to do the quick review and then we will get started. Today we're talking about customer relationship management and customer experience. In Chapter 1, we got the real basics of customer relationship management. We learned how to describe common uses and applications of CRM, understand the origins of CRM, and describe four market orientations. And we were also introduced to the definition. CRM is the core business strategy that integrates internal processes and functions and external networks to create and deliver value to targeted customers at a profit. It is grounded on high quality customer related data and enabled by information technology. In Chapter 2, we started talking about and understanding these relationships and describing the positive outcomes of customer retention, two types of loyalty, and recognizing that there are separate schools of thought and ways of thinking about CRM. Then we talked about managing and using CRM databases. We identified the process required to develop a database, sought to understand the importance of various customer-related information fields and what they can be used for, and then we identified information sources. In Chapter 8, we talked about managing the customer lifecycle, and this is in getting. So this is the phase of getting the customers, acquiring them. And the chapter we're talking about today talks about their expectation, which leads towards retaining them. The goals in the acquisition chapter were to understand different types of new customers, develop a basic understanding of how to calculate the value of a customer or prospect, and identify new sources of new customers and their relative efficacy, efficiency. Okay, so now we're going to talk about customer relationship management and customer experience. Our goals today are to look at the difference between goods, services, and experiences, look at special attributes that characterize services, have a basic knowledge of experience mapping, and look at how customer experience is changed by CRM, sometimes for the better and sometimes for worse. So if we look at the experience economy, we can look at these different categories that vary from the really high on goods versus very high on experiential. And a lot of times what we find is that they end up somewhere in the middle or have features of goods and features of experiences in some ways. So for commodities, very, very strictly goods, we have a low degree of customization. You have a commodity. It is the same no matter what you buy. When it comes to interaction with customers, you don't need to interact with customers when you're selling and buying commodities. They are just the same. They just buy them when they need them. Price strategy is going to be commodity pricing, and there doesn't really need to be any value added, although I would argue that in cases of commodities, if there is good customer service, somebody might pay more for a commodity if you wanted to argue that. Generally, no. If it's all the same, we're just going to buy the cheapest price that we can find. As we move more into goods that have variation in features and what they have to offer, into delivery services of those things, services that come along with the goods, and on into stage experiences that are just, we're attending a thing. It's an experience. We don't take anything away with us. We start to see more customization, more interaction with customers, unique pricing strategies, and then a lot of value added. If we look at stage experiences and interaction with customers, the most custom experience that you can have is one where you are in co-production with whoever's putting on the performance. So for example, we're talking about a mystery dinner where, okay, now you're here and you're actually part of the production part of the presentation. So this is the continuum that we have that I like to show because it gives you a sense of typically what we're talking about is not all the way to the right or all the way to the left. We've got most of our goods are going to be somewhere in the middle. There's going to be some aspect of goods and then some aspect of services. Some important terms in this chapter and on this topic, we have customer experience, which involves the cognitive and affective outcome of the customer's exposure to or interaction with a company's products, services, communications, places, people, processes, or technologies. And when we say affect or affective, we're talking about feelings, like what are the emotions that come out of that. Touch points are wherever your customer comes into virtual or actual contact with your company's products, services, communications, places, people, processes, or technologies. And then engagement, and engagement can be described and defined a variety of ways. We're talking about it in the context of customer relationship management, so not social media or anything else. In this case, we are defining engagement as the customer's emotional and rational response to a customer experience. Um, so that's what we have. Um, when we look at the differentiating factors between goods and services, services will have the features of being inseparable, heterogeneous, perishable, and intangible. And I'm going to go through each of these. So, first, we have intangibility, which means that it cannot be seen, tasted, heard, or felt in the same manner that goods can be sensed. And this is if we're talking a pure good, or I'm sorry, a pure service. If we are somewhere in the middle, it's just more tangible or less tangible. For example, I'm going to fix this slide real quick so we can see. Waiting for computer. 1 second. Here we go. Okay, so say for example, we have a roller coaster ride, which is intangible. You are not taking it home with you. This is a service. You go and it's an experience, really. It's less of a service and it's more of an experience. You go on a roller coaster, you experience it, and then all you take away are the memories. Or we have something like online backups. This is a service that they provide for your data. So when you are marketing these sorts of things, in order for someone to understand what it is being marketed, we have to provide some tangible cues, even though the service itself, the thing that we're selling, is not tangible. So a lot of times we will, as marketers, try to evoke imagery or have something tangible or something that looks like it is in motion and moving. So this is just more on the marketing side rather than customer relationship management, but these are the kinds of things that we have to think about to set expectations. Okay. This is just another view of that continuum. It comes from a different textbook. So this time we have services on the other side and goods on the other side. But we have the very product dominant things over on this side, things that you can have and can see and feel and taste, into things that you can feel and buy and have, but come with a little bit more of a service component because maybe you have to try the clothes on or you need help finding the right thing, into something where part of it is service, part of it is the food that you're eating, some of it is about the experience, um, into more service related things. Okay, so just to give you some ideas of where things might land on that continuum. Another feature is intangibility. So hold on. We have two intangibilities. 1 second. Next is heterogeneity and variability. This is the tendency to be less standardized than goods. So when you go, we'll go back here for a second, you go to a restaurant. Every experience, if you go to that restaurant every week, there will be some things that are similar, and then there will be some things that are different. It's not exactly the same every time that you get it. So there is more room for the experience to have some variation. And then the next feature is perishability. It cannot be stored, warehoused, or inventoried. So say that we are talking about, we'll talk about the restaurant again. If there are lots of seats available during certain times of the day, you cannot save those seats and have them available at the busier times of day. Like you have the space that you have, you can't reuse that time and save it for another time. Those seats are filled later and you can't replicate them or duplicate them. Um, so the food that you can, because that's the good part of the service. It's the service part that you cannot store. So if we go to hotel, if you have empty rooms some nights of the week, you can't save those and store those for the weekends that are busier. If you have things that the guests take home with them, like candy, yes, those can be stocked up, but you can't stock up your finite resources that are more service based. So, for example, if we look at a salon, I'm going to have an assignment where you pick one of these and you tell me the features that are intangible about it, inseparable, heterogeneous, and perishable. So if we're thinking about a salon, I'll do this first one. So I would have you think about like, okay, in what ways is the experience in a salon intangible? You can't see, touch, feel, buy, take it home with you. In what ways is the experience in the salon inseparable from the experience that you're having? So, oh, I don't have inseparable on here. Oh, 1 second. Okay, here's the bit we were missing. Let's go back to inseparability. This means that it's produced and consumed at the same time. So going back to our example of the salon, it's intangible. It's a haircut. You can touch your hair, you can touch the scissors, but you're not really, the service itself is taking your hair from one state into another state. And so while you can physically touch your hair or your haircut, it's not really the same. You are taking the haircut home, but by the time you wash it and wake up in the morning, it's never going to be the same as the way your stylist did it. Your salon experience is inseparable from the time that it happens. You're not going to take your hairstylist home with you unless you do that. And she's not going to be available to just style it for you all of the time. You go there, you experience that, you have the hairstyle, and when you leave, that part of it is over. Heterogeneity, your experience is going to be different, slightly different every time. Even if you have the same hairdresser, it will be slightly different. If you have a different hairdresser, that will be drastically different. So you don't just walk in and have the same experience with every single hairdresser there ever is. And it's also perishable. They cannot take their seats and multiply them without literally expanding their space and buying more seats. If they have empty seats, they can't save them for later and use them at a later time. Okay, so I would like you to pick one of the following to do this with, or you can pick something else. But we have an airline flight. In what ways is this experience intangible, inseparable, heterogeneous, and perishable? Or a college course? Or a hotel stay? Or if you can think of something else on that continuum that is not purely a good, but is more on the side of being an experience, I'd like you to go through the exercise I just did here. Explain to me why it has these features. Okay. Another thing to think about are the core and supplementary services that are happening. So if we talk about a hotel stay, the thing that a person is buying is basically a place to sleep overnight. That's what they have. But they have some expectations relating to other things. So there are some services that happen. The core delivery process is like, here is the room. There is a bed in it. The bed is made, and we have some quality expectations about the place where we will be sleeping, and the room itself, whether that's the bathroom or the things in the room. And then outside of that, we've got some other things that we might have some expectations. Is there parking at the hotel? What is the check-in, check-out process? Is there a porter or a concierge? Is there a meal included? Does it have Wi-Fi and TV included? Is there room service? Is there a phone? What was the reservation process? So there are things about a hotel stay that are not the need that you're satisfying directly, but we have some expectations about on the outside. Okay. So if you think back to what you picked here, come up with, okay, the thing that we are buying when we buy an airline flight is transportation, a seat while we're transported from here to here. What are the other expectations we have that we're receiving when we book an airline flight? Okay, and then we can move on to understanding the customer experience and evaluating service quality, because we as consumers have some expectations, but how do we as marketers and business owners know exactly what customers are expecting, what they're experiencing, how those line up? Did they experience what they expected to experience? So some ways that we can go about that are through mystery shopping, where we hire someone to come in, experience what a customer would experience, and then rate the experience. We can do experience mapping. We can do that ourselves, or we can have someone with a little less bias come in and do it. If you took services marketing with Michelle Judd, you would have done this through process mapping or blueprinting. There's going to be an assignment in this chapter for you to do this. And then you can also observe customer activities. You can also ask them. So this is what I'd like you to do. Pick a workplace or business that you know very well, either as an employee or a customer, or if you would like to do the alternate bonus option, pick somewhere you have never been so you can truly be a new customer and experience it the way a new customer would. Record every step of the process that a customer would face when entering the business for a first time. And if the business is really complicated and offers a lot of things, just pick one thing and one process, and record it from beginning to end. Build a process map that includes all of these steps, and then reflect on the experience. What did you learn by walking through this process? Are there steps that are out of place or confusing to customers? And how would you propose improving the process? And it would look, ooh, hold on. It should look like this. So a hotel guest would make a reservation, possibly online, probably online these days, maybe over the phone. And then on the day of, they arrive at the hotel, they park their car, they check in. The check-in process has a subset of other things. So they are greeted. Someone requests their reservation details. And it looks like they have some questions here. So what does the customer want to happen? What should the receptionist do? What skills, knowledge, and attitudes are needed? And what technological support is required? The reason we have this here is because this is a contact point with a person. So it's important to have that there. They get their swipe card. They may register something or other, log into Wi-Fi, whatever. Hand over the key. And thank you. Okay. Oh, sorry. I said they get their swipe card. This is the reservation person taking their actual credit card. And probably also saying something like, we are putting a hold on your account for incidentals. Register them the room, hand over the key, thank you, and then the person can move on. They take their bags to the room. Probably what will happen. It could happen. There could be a variation to this. That person may have left their bags outside. So then they go back outside, maybe drive to a different area, take their bags out of the car and get up to the room. So there might be more pieces to this. So they get their bags to the room. Then they stay in the hotel for a while, and then they leave the hotel. And we could add to this a checkout process if we wanted to. You don't have to draw yours exactly like this. Yours can be very linear. Yours can have a bit of a decision tree where if they decide to go this way, this is what happens. Whatever you do, I want to see where you end up and what you end up getting. And then we have customer expectations and service gaps. This isn't really addressed in this way in the reading that I gave you, but I want to talk about a couple things that are pretty common in research on service quality. So the idea of service gaps is they can happen in service gaps happen in one place, but gaps can happen in a number of places. And a service gap is the difference between a customer's expectations for the quality of service and the difference between the actual service delivered. So that gap is like if the service delivered is exactly what they expected, then there is no gap. But the further away it is, the bigger the gap. On the management side, if customer expectations for service quality are different than management perceptions of customer expectations, there's a knowledge gap. And the mystery shopping and the building the process map, those are ways that you get at this gap, is making sure that what management thinks customers expect is actually what customers expect. The gap between management perceptions and the standards specifying service to delivered, so the process that is in place, would be a standards gap. So if we go back to this and say, okay, these are the instructions for what you're supposed to do. This is how you're supposed to say it. This is the smile you're supposed to have. This is the dress code you're supposed to have. So things that would show up in an employee handbook and happen in training are the standards. And then the difference between the standards and the actual service are a delivery gap. So if you have trained someone to behave a certain way and deliver service in a different way and they do not do it, there is a gap between their training and the actual service delivered. And that can be, oh, we didn't train this person well enough, or it can be, oh, we trained this person super well and they are willfully not doing what we asked and we should fire them. And then the difference between the actual service delivered and then the promises that a retailer might make in their advertisements about quality would be a communication gap. And I would say that this is very, very linked to this. So the communication to the consumer would probably set their expectations. And then if there's a gap, so it kind of goes around in a circle. Very, very fun model. And then we've got this idea of zone of tolerance. And so these blue boxes are what the consumer will tolerate. So say that this is their expectation on a 9-point scale of what they want to see in a service. So this is Lou's Local Diner on, hold on, let me see. Reliability, responsiveness, tangibles, so the food itself, empathy, and assurance. So Lou's actual performance on average is really high on reliability, a little bit lower on responsiveness, so maybe how fast the servers are. The service is better than the food. The empathy of the managers and the people there, pretty low. I'm not sure what they mean on assurance. I don't know. But anyways, so that's Lou on those things. And then the competitor falls below Lou on all of these things. So even though Lou isn't doing super good on empathy, neither is their nearest competitor. And they do a lot better than their nearest competitor on assurance, how good their food is, and also responsiveness. Okay. And then using those 2 points, we have a zone of tolerance. It looks like people expect reliability to be really good. So I guess that would probably be every time we go, this is what the food is like. I know what to expect. They are reliable. Every time I get what I expect. And this is their zone of tolerance here. Zone of tolerance here on responsiveness. Lou's Diner actually falls out of the zone of tolerance on responsiveness, which might mean that their servers are too responsive. They might be hovering over the table and being really annoying and are just like too on it that it sets people on edge. So they might actually want to tone that down a bit. The food, people really just don't like this food and they're not willing to accept it. And Lou's food is just better. Empathy, it looks like people have a pretty broad zone of tolerance for empathy. Some places we go are pretty empathetic, but also chains are not. We're willing to accept that. Fine. And nobody knows what assurance is. I don't know. It's behaving a little bit like this one over here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. And then I put this out of order, but that's what I have for today. You have the two assignments. The one is looking at some sort of service type of thing and explaining to me how it operates in terms of intangibility, inseparability, heterogeneity, and perishability, and then also coming up with a process map for either something you are familiar with because you work there or have been there a lot, or something completely new and you go in and experience it like a mystery shopper would. Okay, so those are the two things you're responsible for.